What is up, everybody? Oh my goodness, we're here. First episode of Rough Draft, and if you're watching the video, then it's called Rough Draft for a reason.
Yeah.
We're looking a little rough. It's okay.
Yes.
It's the first episode. It's the first week. This is kind of the setup. We're actually like in my room. This is my room. I had to make it a little bit more presentable. I mean, I'm pretty much like a neat freak anyway, so my room looks like this all the time, but I did have to make it just look a little bit more presentable. We got the mics and studio set up. Man, if y'all could see how this room looks right now, because we have stuff from all over the place.
All over the house.
Just stuff from everywhere. And I'm sure, it's stuff everywhere. But again, like, we're here. Like, we did it. We made it. This is the first episode. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Justin. And right here is my beautiful mother. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we're going to get right into it.
Yeah, I think you introduced me. I'm your mom. You want me to tell a little more than that?
I would appreciate it if you did.
Okay, all right. I'll go into a little more detail of who I am. Cool. My name is Kimberly Jones. I am in ministry, and your dad, Louis D. Jones Jr. We are in ministry together and have been for over 20 years doing ministry as pastors. More recently, the Lord has opened up our, I would say, platform, for lack of a better word, to be able to do a next level ministry outside of the four walls of the church. That's good. And so we are traveling, we are doing discipleship, we are doing a lot of virtual stuff. And God is really, really being faithful to us in this season. We're excited. We're cool. So out of the box. We are so out of the box right now.
I think that goes for literally, I guess, everyone in our family right now. We're all just doing crazy, like super crazy, like different things. So like for those of you guys like who don't know, like, so my parents are in ministry, I'm in ministry, but for the past 3 or 4 years we weren't working in the same ministry, right? And so I went through Bible school at Free Chapel College, so graduated, so studied ministry there. I actually work there part-time now, and I get to do like a lot of fun stuff. But on top of that, more recently, I now get to kind of come back home, if you will. I am home. I actually moved back home.
Literally. Right.
So literally, so in January, I literally moved back home. But not even spiritually, I get to be back home, and I get to do some awesome ministry stuff with my parents. Love it. And so I was like, so we're kicking this podcast off. And I was like, who should be like my first guest? And I was like, probably the person who like pushed me the hardest to get this thing done.
Who would that be?
Right. Who would that be? For those of y'all who like personally like know me, you know that I start a bunch of things and I have a lot of great ideas, a lot of awesome, amazing ideas. If my dreams could make me money, I would be I would be a billionaire. I'm pretty sure. Point. If my dreams could make me money. But then like we look on the other side and we're like, oh, how many of those became reality? And it's like tough to say, but like not a lot. But this podcast was one thing that I really felt Holy Spirit impart, and I was like, I have to do this. And so who else better to tell than my mom? She didn't mention this, and she can talk about it a little bit if she wants. But like her like professional, she does ministry, but then professionally she is like a Christian life coach and counselor. She did that in the healthcare world for a while before transitioning out of there and then coming to do that full time for herself, self-employed, all the things. Like, she's awesome, and I'm sure that she'll get to talk about that even more. But so she like went to Liberty University. I'm telling your story. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Take it on.
I mean, but it's fine. Yeah. So I did go to Liberty University. I got my bachelor's in human services counseling, and then got my master's in the same field in counseling, and then came out of there and discovered this whole world of coaching, and got certified as a master life and empowerment coach. Wow. and I absolutely positively love it.
Yeah.
All of those fields, counseling, coaching, very different, but both within the realm of helping professionals.
Yeah.
And I always say that I am, and you can ask some people. Some people say this about me. I'm a people pusher. Okay,
Yes.
and so
yes.
he's a product of that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. No, like literally. Literally, like she pushes me to be the best version of myself and do that, and I am so grateful for it. I know a lot of young people who kind of have like a strained relationship with their parents, and so I'm glad that we don't. I'm glad that like you and Dad, you both see something on the inside of me, and so you don't squander it. You don't like push it to the side and say, no, this is what you need to do. Y'all have encouraged and supported me through everything.
Yeah.
And that's been it. It's been that way the whole time. When I wanted to do karate, y'all pushed me. When I wanted to take acting classes, like y'all pushed me. Like it was like anything. And I like, especially like that. Yeah, that elementary, middle school phase. Like,
you had me all over the place.
I wanted to do and try and be everything. So
everywhere,
everything, everywhere, all the time. Worked
modeling. Did you say that?
Oh no, I didn't say that.
I gotta pull out those modeling
Please
pictures.
do not.
You don't want me to?
No, we're not doing that.
Okay, all right.
We're not doing that. No, but yeah, I did it all. And so like it's cool because growing up, honestly, in a society and in a culture where a lot of people are saying you can only do one thing.
Yeah.
So do that one thing, become great at it, and just do it for the rest of your life. Like, like we see that in culture and in society of growing up and just seeing this one way to do life. And I really feel like my generation is kind of breaking the mold on that. Even when it comes to like career and college and just all those things of just really breaking the mold of saying that I don't have to do one thing. And if there is one thing that I'm doing, there's more than one way to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's
and
good.
So it is just really inspiring. It's just really cool to be able to be a part of that generation. But what I love is that that you and Dad, even though you grew up in very different households where things were very different, you didn't try and instill that on me. You didn't try to instill that on Kayla. That's my sister.
Yeah.
And so like we're grateful for it. And so it's just really, really inspiring to have this kind of relationship that we have. It wasn't, our relationship was never bad, but it wasn't always like this.
Right, right. No, I don't think any
No.
relationships like this are ever perfect.
No.
And I think relationships with children and parents, if we allow it to, it evolves over time.
Right.
Yeah, I think it evolves over time and it changes.
Yeah. I think you guys definitely like even with me like moving back home, like it's not the same as when I was in high school and I lived at home. Like the relationship is very much so like you're an adult and you make adult decisions, but like we're here.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like a really beautiful thing because like again, like I'm 22, well just turned 22 like a few days ago. And so like I know a lot of like kids my age, I think get to the place even younger, like at 18. I feel like, I'm 18, I'm independent, like I'm moving out, like I'm gone, like I'm spreading my wings and I'm flying.
Right.
Which I did.
You did, right?
I did.
For a minute.
For a minute. I moved out for about a year.
Was it a year?
It was like, yeah, it was a year.
It was, right?
It was because I remember like, I remember like basically packed this room up and moved out to Gainesville.
Right.
Yeah.
You remember?
To Gainesville, and
I remember standing in the driveway.
And you were like crying as I was driving away in my car.
To Gainesville,
like, and yeah, just geographically, Gainesville is like an hour 15 from here.
Right, but it was the whole packing up everything and your car full, and you're driving.
Y'all would have thought that I was moving to like Alaska.
It was serious.
But I will say, like, and you can definitely talk about it. I will say that drive for me even was like, I was like, I'm doing this. Even though like,
were you excited? What were you?
Yeah,
I never thought about that.
Yeah, it was exciting. I remember like just like being in my car, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like I'm doing this. Like,
right.
I'm moving.
Right.
Like, out the house, and I was like, I don't know what is gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna move back or if this is kind of like if that was my final time. Like, living here. And it's not like I would never like come back, because I did. Even when I did live out there, I was
not a whole lot.
I was here, not a whole lot, because I was
you were living a life,
doing my thing, living the life, and Yeah. And then it all crashed and burned, and I was homeless on the street, and then I had to move. I'm
You
kidding.
were
I'm
not
kidding. No.
homeless.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like a like I was out
You
there.
weren't
and
on
like,
Skid Row or anything
right.
like
I didn't
that.
like turn to like a life of like drugs.
Right,
And was
right.
homeless.
No, you didn't do that.
It was actually like it was good. The people that I was living with, of course, all Christians. We're chasing after God. You know, we're all in ministry school together. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's not perfect, but it was better than most young adult, especially young guy living situations.
Right.
Me and 3 other guys in an apartment.
Making it work. Yeah,
we made it work. We talk about it now, and we don't know how we did that.
Right.
But we did it.
Right.
We did it, and it was really cool. So, but yeah, moved away for a year. Moved back home in January, and that was even like a rough transition for me, just because I was like, oh, I'm giving this freedom up. But man, if I could talk to myself, but like when I was trying to make that decision of coming back home,
right,
and talk to me like when I left, I would have been like, okay, like, yeah, like you need this, but don't hold on to it. Because and not in like a somber
what do you mean don't hold on to it?
Not in like a somber kind of way, but like I'm very, very grateful that I made the decision to come back and that I was obedient enough to come back. Because I fought it for like a minute. Just because I was like, I just don't want to lose that freedom. But it's crazy because right now, at this very moment in time, I'm the freest that I've been in a very long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, and again, like I said before, it's not the same as when I was in high school. So y'all aren't on my case 24/7 about where I'm at.
We kind of slack on some, right?
Yeah, you have. You do good. You do good.
Yes, I've adjusted.
Yeah,
I've adjusted.
Man, y'all should have, like, when I first started, like the college and everything, and there would be like days when we had to go out to Gainesville and do different things, like.
What did I do?
She'd be like, she'd call me,
you like a million times.
Yeah, like, just where are you at? Like, where, like, you know, but I mean, again, it's like, that was my first, like, I had never moved out or done anything
away from
prior to that. Right.
I mean, not for a long extended period of time.
There were like week summer camps here and there, but never like.
Right, like that. So that's you talk about, you know, I never thought about when you said the drive when you left to go. I never thought about what you may have been experiencing or feeling. But I do remember the feelings that I had at watching you drive off in the sunset, so to speak, and just feeling like, man, this is real. Like it says so many things to me. Like, you know, you're a young adult. Yeah. You know, you got to make your own decisions. Yeah. You got to find your own way. Yeah. I got to trust God. Yes. You know, I got to remember what He said about you and know that it was not predicated upon your physical locale, but what God said is what He said, whether you were under our roof or whether you were in Gainesville, you know, with your friends living out there. So it was an adjustment on both sides, I think.
For sure. And I learned some things, and went through some rough patches, and just had that opportunity to grow. Yeah. And it was the coolest thing that, like, when I made the decision to come back home, I was like very honest with you, and I was like, hey, like, as much as I enjoyed it, like, I'm not where I'm like supposed to be. Right. And I wasn't the strongest that I like should have been to be able like to handle myself. And so like moving back home has been great because I've just seen so much growth in myself and discipline and obedience and just really listening to God, growing my relationship with Him, because that's like the most important thing. And so even like if there are like young people like listening and that's something that you're contemplating, or you like live at home right now and you are a little older, like there's no shame in it, there's no guilt in it, there's growth in it. And at least there was, like, for me, again, I feel like people are so different and I feel like situations are different. But yeah,
I feel like that without our even knowing it, that we kind of morph into these societal norms that say at a certain age you're supposed to do this,
Right.
and at a certain age
Exactly.
you're supposed to have this done, and if you're 18 you got to go away. And I remember when you were graduating from high school, and we were talking about colleges, and we'd gone on college visits and
Yes.
all of that. And I mean, this guy right here just could have had his choice from some very nice colleges. Not, I mean, Free Chapel is wonderful, but I'm just saying the traditional 4-year go away type of setups, right? And that's what we thought. Like, that's what we thought. As a matter of fact, I can remember you're being so stressed out, like your last several years in high school. What am I going to do? You know, where am I going to go? And I remember, you know, we had gone, like I said, what were some of the places we went to?
We visited. So this was
in Tulsa.
Yeah, in Tulsa. So we went to ORU, but even even
ORU.
before that, like, there was this conversation, and I'm pretty sure like you know about it, of even the conversation of like not going to like a Christian university. Like, it was like the conversation of, oh, like, I feel like I really can go anywhere, and I really like could have.
Right.
And so it was just like cool, even when.
Help me remember. That was, I was saying that, or you were
No.
just.
That was just kind of like a consider, like,
okay.
you know, just like a consideration. But then it wasn't until my like sophomore or junior year, when I got that call to ministry, and I was like, okay, like, I think I want to take this a little bit more seriously, and just decided to rule out all secular universities.
Yeah.
Not saying that, of course, you can't have spiritual encounters at a secular university. I have friends who go to UGA, who go to UNG,
Right.
who go to Free Chapel and have a great relationship with God. Not saying that, but I knew for me, like, there was a different call in my life.
Yeah.
And so I definitely understood that, okay, this may require something different.
For you.
Right, for me.
Yeah.
So we started looking at regular 4-year Christian universities.
Yes.
So, like, remember we went to Tulsa, visited ORU. We went to Cleveland and visited Lee, which was like super, super set on that. Like, I remember, and we could talk about like a little more later, but I remember literally, like, even after I graduated from Free Chapel and did the 2-year ministry program, I thought about going back to Lee, and God just kind of rearranged some things like He always does.
Right.
I've learned to never, write your plans out in pen with God. Like, use a pencil, because there are moments where He will redirect, and we have to be flexible to redirect, because His plans are greater than ours.
That's right.
And His thoughts are higher than ours, and His ways are higher. So
they are. And I think we've seen that in just kind of relinquishing our premeditated, so to speak, thoughts of what life should look like for you, for your education, for your spiritual walk. And I love the fact that God is sovereign, because I can remember confirmation of that before you came to us and told us about Free Chapel and the setup there. Someone had prophesied to us about you. I don't know if you remember this, and said that you really should consider, due to the anointing that's on Justin's life, him doing something different than traditional, 4-year college.
Yeah.
And I remember this individual prophesying that, and I was like, man, I hear you, God, but I wonder, what Justin is going to think about that, if we share it. Before we could share it, I mean, this was like maybe a day apart, or maybe even the same day that you came to us. You remember that? And you said, look what I found. Look what it was as if, God whispered to us, and then He whispered to you in different places, but He said the same thing. And so when we had that conversation, it was like, God, we hear you. Yeah. We hear you. And then that was when the whole idea of, because I remember I was like, Justin, as smart as you were and as intelligent and AP classes, I was like, remember I used to always say, engineer, you want to be an engineer? You want to be a doctor, a lawyer, all of those things, right? Consider those things. And there was always, Justin has always been so respectful, very respectful, and never came out and said, I don't want to do that. But from his responses, I could tell that there was something else churning in his heart.
Yeah, it was.
Right?
It was so funny. Yeah, because I literally remember she was like, like, what about like engineering? And I was like, I don't think I want to be an engineer. And it was so funny because at my high school, it was like an academy school. So they would kind of put you in this lane, and there were basically like 5 different academies to choose from. And one of them was like STEM. So, your science, technology, engineering, and math. And so coming into the high school, freshman got last pick. So I wanted to go into the media arts and communications like track and be able to do that, but I wasn't able to. So they put me in STEM because of, like my academic rigor, like leading up to that point. So they put me in there, and guess what class they put me in? They put me in engineering. So I did engineering my freshman year, and I just honestly, I remember sitting in that class. It's crazy. I did great in it.
I was gonna say, you killed it. Good.
I killed it in that class. I killed it and it's so funny because like what it kind of like came back to was honestly just the ingenuity and the creativity that I didn't really realize at the time that engineers have, because basically like you're making something out of nothing.
That's good.
And so it's really cool because
so it's your gift.
Right. And so like I was like, okay, got it. Engineering. Okay, cool. We'll see. And it's so funny because there's like a bunch of different types of engineers, like civil engineers and, more than, just all mechanical, all that stuff. But it was really cool because then my sophomore year, I got to get out of it, and I was like, let's go. And I got out of that pathway.
Yeah.
Got into the media arts communications pathway. That's where I did film, studied film in high school.
Yeah.
Film was actually awesome. I don't know if you remember anything, but if you want to.
I loved it. That's where I started really seeing your gift surface. Like I was blown away by, you used to do those
like the little like
videos with the kids at school and for projects, and I would be like, you did this?
Right.
And they were it was amazing to see that develop right in front of our eyes. It developed as you were positioned properly. And I think that is so important as parents, that we not force our children into this mold of what we think, but that we should always consult with God and then watch. And then watch our kids and see, what's surfacing, what's coming to the top, and then facilitate greatness in that area. And I think when we finally did that, when everything was coming together, and we had to do that all over again with college. All over again. We did it with college. But the wonderful thing is that we are a family of faith, and that we all agree that God has the final say about each and every one of our lives. And we've seen that happen. It hasn't always been easy. There have been days when we've walked away from conversations and I'm like, throw my hands up like he's not getting it.
And then I would too. I'd be like, they don't get it.
Yeah. But one thing that always has kept us together is that we're grounded in our faith, and we believe that God is always going to have the final say about our lives.
I agree. And it's so cool to like see God work, and being able to like be a part of like that journey, and then you be a part of that journey and see it on the outside looking in. And I think it's cool because we've never really sat down and had the conversation. I mean, we've had conversations here and there about like what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be, but like, I guess to sit down together and to look at the journey of all that and where I am today, which we'll get to in a minute. I think it's just got like you said, like God's sovereignty. I was reading my devotional yesterday, and it was talking about how like with David, how it said like the safest place for him to actually be, and the story is in 2 Samuel, is on the front line of battle. And it's so funny because you would never think in a million years that the safest place for us to be is on the front line, but the reason that it's the safest place is because God has already won and fought every single battle that we face. And so it's so funny because it looks new to us, but also in scripture, there's nothing new under the sun. And so God has won and defeated every enemy, and every single thing that the enemy tries to use to separate relationships like this and tries to manipulate us individually and as a family. I just remember, oh my goodness, like it was so scary to me. Like started doing film because that was something that I didn't even know that I was good at, honestly. But I just knew like, cause I considered journalism for a little bit, but I was like, no, like, I want to try this film thing. I want to check it out. I want to see. And it's funny. I don't know if you know this, but it was really just because I wanted to be on the school announcements. And it was like,
oh my God.
And it was so...
Wait, the school in the morning in the office?
Because well, we didn't do it in the office. So at South, we had a whole broadcast. We had a whole broadcast studio. So it wasn't necessarily just like being on the announcements, but I did know that like I loved, talking and, public speaking. And so I was like, wow, that could be really cool. I didn't think I wanted to be like a news broadcaster or anything, but I mean, that was kind of something I was like, let's just see where this goes. Cause remember, like we did the whole acting thing and I was like, this is cool. So I can like do film and they both kind of connect. And my thought was more so I'm going to be in front of the camera, which I was like a good amount of time. But then like through that, like I absolutely fell in love with being behind it and getting to direct and just say, okay, this is what I see. I've always been like a super visual person. And I know that you can kind of like attest like to that. So being able to get behind the camera and say, this is what I see. All right. Okay, so we're back.
Yes.
A little bit of a technical difficulty. My camera like shut off. I didn't know it had a recording limit, and it has a recording limit, and it shut us off. But guess what? This is the first episode. That's what this whole podcast thing is about.
Yeah. That's what rough drafts are about.
That's what rough drafts are about. Like, yeah. And so now we know for next time, but we're gonna keep it moving. And just try and get this done before it does it again.
Yes, so we got it now.
Yeah, we do.
It only takes us one time to learn, right?
Yeah, no, literally. Okay. And if y'all could have like heard,
it was so awesome.
The stuff that we were talking about before it shut off, like absolutely insane.
It was so good.
It got really good.
But it's gonna get better. That's
but
all
it's
that
gonna
means.
get even better. That's all that means. Yeah.
That's right. It's gonna get
so
better.
Where we left off, I was talking about high school. Being able to do film and just how that gave me the creativity to make something out of nothing. So I think that's a really good place to kind of start back from. And so let's just get right back into it. Yeah. So like I was saying, so did film in high school, and was just kind of watching God move through that, allow me to kind of like see things that I saw creatively and have them, become a reality, making that something out of nothing, which is something that I actually learned in engineering.
Right.
So I learned that in engineering. And so again, just to see how God moves in those kind of moments, it's so important and it's so pivotal. And you and Dad played a really huge part in that. But there was something that we talked about a little bit before, and I mentioned David. And I was talking about how David, he was in the literal like line of fire, but that's what he was born to do. And I was reading in my devotion about how the safest place is actually on the front line. And when the recording shut off, we were talking about it, but you mentioned something, and I kind of do want you to go back into that.
Yeah. Well, I was correlating that whole idea of David being on the front line with kind of some of the things that you experienced or that we experienced with your process. So you talked about David, the best place for him being there, and how that seemed kind of weird because who would think that being on the front line would be a safe place?
Right.
But it's only a safe place for someone who was created for the front line.
Exactly.
When you're created for the front line, that is the safest place for you.
Yes.
And everything around you begins to acquiesce to that you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about how, we talked about, us wanting, me, now I won't put your dad in there, but me trying to steer you in this direction of engineer, doctor, lawyer, because of what I knew you had the capacity to do and your potential, and how you did end up in that engineering class in the 9th grade. And that it woke up something on the inside of you. Yeah. And I was talking about how even your being in that class was like David being put on the front line, because that's the place that would produce maximum capacity and maximum results from your life and from what God places on the inside of us and what God placed on the inside of you. So when we really want to get the maximum out of the gift, we got to be in the right place. And I believe that the Lord, I not just believe, I know that God was ordering your steps through all of this, even to the point, and I don't know if you want to go in and get right into this, even to the point of how he gave you the ability to be able to connect with other ministries outside of our church, which was really pivotal and instrumental in your growth.
Yeah, it was certainly. Yeah, of course. So like growing up, it was a huge, kind of a huge thing. I had grown up, basically born into our church, and so that was all I knew. But God had just kind of began to plant like a seed of me really honestly just wanting to find community, and so it kind of stemmed to me going to 12 Stone, visited there, and I mean just automatically just kind of fell in love with it, and not even because they were a bigger church, but honestly because of the people,
like the community, right? The connections,
the connection. It was so pivotal for my growth, and it was even there that I got the call to ministry, and so like I think there was where the seed was planted for where I am now, me being and working at Free Chapel, and being there and just doing like all the things I'm doing there, and this even ties a little back into David, like. From 12 Stone to Free Chapel, like that wasn't a easy transition. That wasn't a super easy. Even being there, like that wasn't a super easy journey, either. And I would love to even talk about that, because when I was at 12 Stone, I was there on Wednesdays, but I was at church
on Sundays with us.
On Sundays with you guys. But then Free Chapel, I completely was there Sunday through Thursday, and I know that was a huge transition moment, even for our family. And what ministry looked like for our family, and I definitely want you to talk about that some.
Yeah. So when you went to started going to 12 Stone, and that connection, when I think one of the pastors came to your school.
Yes.
Was that one of the pastors came to your school, and then we would drive by the church and would see the signs for youth ministry or whatever. And anyway, God connected the dots, and you ended up going there, and we were happy about that because what you needed, and I remember having conversations with you, heartfelt conversations where you would express your need and your desire for your tribe. Like, I need my tribe. I need the people who, are like me, who have the same desires as me and love Jesus, right? And that was my heart's cry for you as well. And so really, to be honest with you, 12 Stone was an answer to our prayers.
Wow.
And because at the time, with the transitions that our church was going through, we did not have what you needed in that season. We didn't have it. I mean, as much as we desired to have it and wanted to have it, we didn't. And so to see you thriving at 12 Stone and accepting the call and the retreats you used to go on and all of that, that was amazing to watch.
Yeah.
But then we come to another level when we talk about, Free Chapel and college, and you're completely, just taking that plunge into all things Free Chapel, right?
Yes.
And so for me, it was like, oh my goodness, like it was real. It became real because, like you said, at 12 Stone, at least you were with us on Sundays. But now, it's this whole kind of exodus out of life as we knew it, and you're over at Free Chapel. And I was as much excited as I was about the thing at 12 Stone to see you find your own and find your place.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, I felt like it left a gap for us at the church, because you had started doing stuff like praise and worship, and you were doing the sound and some of the creative stuff that was going on. Mm-hmm. You had given us, you were really our the person who gave us the like a consultant, so to speak. I think that's the word I'm thinking of, and telling us what to do. Well, you should do this, and we had totally changed, right?
Yeah.
The layout of the platform and everything upon your advice and input and things of that sort. So you had really started growing in your place at Prevailing Love, which is our church, or which was our church before we shifted.
Right.
And so for you to leave, it was hard for that reason. And then also just as a mother. And then to see you go over here and totally engross yourself.
Right. Even to the point of moving out.
Moving out. You engrossed yourself, and then you moved out. And it was like another, oh, God, this is real. And so it was hard, and I was like, and he's loving it. He's like, not that I didn't want you to love it. I wanted you to be happy, but I was like, oh, and this is just a transparent moment of, well, what does that say about us? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What does that say? But that, it didn't say anything about us. That's the truth. It didn't say anything about us. It said everything about God's sovereignty to position our children where they need to be.
Right.
And I think, getting to that, especially from a pastoral perspective, getting to that point to realize with our children that if we can't give it to them, or if it's time for them to move on and get something else, that we have to be open for that, because God allows all things to work together for our good. And I think we talked about this before, how full circle you're being in those positions at Free Chapel, learning ministry stuff, seeing behind the scenes, being able to participate. It grew you up. It gave you such insight and wisdom, at a young age that I didn't have at your age. And so you started coming home and talking about stuff. Started coming home and sharing stuff. Things were birthed in us for His glory, the next level of ministry.
Right.
And now you see God doing this, right?
Yep. Bringing it out.
It feels like it's this, but then all of a sudden it starts to do this again.
Yep.
Because God is sovereign and He knows. He sees down the line where we don't.
That's really good. That's really good. And I think it just, again, just like you were saying, speaks to the sovereignty. Like, God is good and He's faithful to the point where it's like, even when we don't understand and even when we don't know, like, He knows. And so our position in relationship with God is, we don't follow God to know, but we follow God because He knows. And so it's this really beautiful, like, tension that it took me forever to learn. But I'm really in that place now where I'm like, okay, God, like, before I used to be in this place of, and I have my moments of control, where I like to control everything. But I think it's even better when we can sit in those tension moments where we're like, okay, God, I know I can't control this. So I'm going to stop trying to control it, and I'm just going to give you control. And when we do that, it just opens the door for so much more. I had this picture of what ministry looked like. Okay. I did. I had a picture of what ministry looked like, and not saying that that's not a part of the call, because it is, but I thought that meant that I had to start a church.
Where did you get that picture from?
From growing up and just seeing it. Okay. And that was on, and not even just at our church, but just church in general. Just church in general. I was like, okay, if you feel the call to ministry, that means that you're either called to preach or lead worship. That's pretty much it. Yeah. Like there's not really a whole lot more to it. And then of course, like, outreach and like evangelism and stuff, but missions, I was just like, no thanks. Which,
and that's funny.
That's hilarious. Even with this whole next season, and we'll have to talk about that another time. We'll have to. But just going back to that, like, I was like, yeah, no way, God, like, this is what you're saying, so I have to start a church. I have to preach and pastor. I have to preach and pastor. And so it was so funny, like, going to Free Chapel, so that's what I did. Like, I studied youth ministry. I preached. I pastored. I got a chance to be in youth ministry, which is a huge, that is, like, it's my heart, youth and young adult ministry, just seeing young people grow into everything that they're called to be. And it's funny because now I'm at a place where that is still the call. I'm still called to preach and pastor, but not in the way that I thought I was called to preach and pastor.
So there's another way to preach and pastor?
Exactly. It's crazy, right? Yeah. And it's so funny, but yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. And so now, and COVID surprisingly helped with this, but basically in COVID, unless you've been living under a rock, like, I'm sure you know that for like about 6 months, we weren't going anywhere. And so we weren't in church. And so, like, I think that was really a chance for the body of Christ, the big C church, to really do a heart check and really see, okay, like, we don't have the building, but here's what we do have, and here's what we know. We know the gospel, and we know who Jesus is. And so there's no reason why we can't still take this to people.
Right.
And so I saw this huge kind of thing happen on social media. And it was so funny. Young person after young person using social media to proclaim the gospel in a way like I've never really seen before. Yeah. I've seen people go on there, like, put their favorite scripture in their bio. I love Jesus, that kind of stuff. But I mean, like, these people are crying. These people are, like, heartfelt, like, in their camera, like, I'm sitting here at my house, and I know that God is so good, and I want you to know that He's good. And it's like, in the season of darkness, we really begin to see a light. Right. And it was so amazing to me, and I think that's where God kind of started to connect the dots in my life, because I was doing all this creative stuff in film and social media, and I made the decision that, okay, God, like, I really feel like you're calling me to create content, but I don't know what that looks like in terms of ministry. So now, God, I'm in this tension again, kind of kind of not, trust in God's sovereignty that if he had me here, he has me here. But of course, we get in our own way sometimes.
Yeah.
We get in our own way sometimes. And so here I am, like, it's where the light bulb kind of went off for me. And I'm like, oh, wait, I can use the gifts, the practical, creative side of myself to spread the message of Jesus. I don't have to preach on a stage on a Sunday morning. Not saying that isn't a part of the call, and maybe it is down the line, but like just kind of being where I am right now. And so even like with Free Chapel, like my role has shifted entirely. And it's so funny because once my role shifted entirely, like doors began to open that were kind of open when I first got there, but like we as a family, we've seen some crazy stuff happen even over the past 6 months, just because I said yes and I said, okay, God, like I give you control.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think a couple of things. I'm still stuck kind of on, excuse me, that we don't follow God to know. We follow him because he knows.
Yes.
Okay, so you just say stuff like that, and then you move on like you said nothing, and I'm sitting over here, and it's like fireworks going off in my head. Like, my God, that's
you
so
should have
good.
stopped me. You should have stopped me.
You were doing so good. I didn't, but I wasn't gonna let it go because that is so amazing. That is so true, and that is so powerful. But it ties in. It's perfect for me to mention it now because isn't it something that how when God is moving us and we get exposed to some next level of information or instruction, and instead of leaning into it, it freaks us out.
Oh,
and we kind of like, because it's like every
it's
time
overload.
it's overload. But God never expects us to know it all. He expects us to trust that he knows.
Exactly.
And so when we get exposure to these next levels and these new opportunities, it's not for us to stress out. I know I've seen you stress out, son. Oh my goodness. Like as God was and still is just journeying you through with these opportunities, and sometimes it feels like it's not happening fast enough, and sometimes it feels like it's never going to happen, and what you thought was going to happen didn't happen, and so now and you have to rethink it and rework it. Man, we have been through a lot, and we've seen the hand of God be so consistent that every time something else happens, that we might see it as a point of anxiety or frustration, and he's like, it's just part of the plan. It's just part of the plan. And the other thing that I was going to say now, with this whole social media thing, when the pandemic hit, now everybody's out there and you see another level of engagement from your generation. And I don't think we talked about this yet, but not only does it show you that there are more people out there like you that loves Jesus, but then again, being exposed to something else, there's this level of now I got to do it that way. Oh, that's how it's supposed to look. Oh, so that I know that did it for some of you all too. I know you had your bout with that as well.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I was so like, I was like, okay, God, like I'm watching it and it looks like everybody's kind of doing it this way. So I feel like I have to do it this way. Yeah. And it was stressful because I wasn't being myself.
Right.
I was doing things and trying to do things and make things happen like on my own instead of being like very open, honest, and transparent about like the way that I like approach things and the way that I present the gospel and the way that I just present myself. And so it was and that was kind of hard because then of course during the pandemic and stuff I didn't really know myself, and so then now I'm sitting here trying to talk about a God who loves me, and I'm doing it in a way that I've seen other people do it because I hadn't really fully experienced it the way that they had. And so they were doing what they were supposed to do because they had experienced it, and I was trying to mimic an encounter.
Wow.
They made that content, they made those videos, they did those things because they had an encounter with Jesus.
So it was real for them.
It was real for them. It wasn't real for me. And I was trying to mimic it.
And how many young people out there are doing this same thing?
The same thing.
Because they're after instead of having a heart after God, they're having a heart after a following or maybe a blue check. Isn't that what it is?
Yeah,
the blue check. Yeah, a blue check.
Yes.
I'm an influencer.
Oh goodness, yes.
Oh, and it's so much of that's going on.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, it's something I struggled with for a little bit because I was like, okay, God, like I want to make sure that my intentions are right. Like check my heart and let me know, like, am I doing this for that, or am I really doing this for you?
Yeah.
In that season, like, he revealed that, like, my intentions, like, weren't really in the right place. Now, but even, it's funny, because we can even have good intentions sometimes, but go about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so it was honestly a heart check of, okay, God, like, if I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it for you, then I need to do it the way that you want me to do it. And that took a lot of time. Yeah. Honestly. It took a lot of time.
That took a lot of time. And added with that, and that's why I love this whole concept of rough draft.
Yes.
And what the message that it sends is that we're a work in progress. Yeah. And that there's a route and a path that all of us have to take. There are different versions of who we are. That's good. And God is always, just like when you have a rough draft and you turn it into your instructor, they're going to put the red marks on it and, mark things out. And isn't that what happens to us in our journey? That as we are going from faith to faith, from glory to glory, that's what God is doing with us. Yes. So that we'll be ready for the final version for this season, because there's going to be another rough draft for the next season.
That's so good.
It's gonna keep on going. So good. It's gonna keep on going.
That is so good. I love what you mentioned. Even like down to like the red pen, because I think that just really points to criticism. I think that's another thing that my generation, like, we just hate. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, like, it's not criticism. Like, no one wants for someone to look at them and say, this is what you could improve on.
Right.
Like we like to think that that's like a job for like ourselves. But when other people do it, it's good. Yeah, and we're really good. We've gotten really good at red pinning ourselves. But like when other people try and do it, then we get defensive and we say, you don't know me and all this. But it's like, oh my goodness, like if we only knew. Wow. Thank you, Holy Spirit. If we only knew the final product, like it's
and
this,
we don't. He does.
And we don't. He does. Woo. And it's this process. Like, but we want that, but we don't want to go through the process it takes to get there. We don't want to go through the red pen. We don't want to go through the conviction. We don't want to go through the having to surrender and let go of our preferences and things to really receive everything that God has for us. But it's necessary and it's required. And as much as I hate to say it, oh man, I don't have everything figured out.
Right.
But.
And neither do I.
And it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like you, and that's what I love about this podcast, about these conversations, is that I'm not bringing people on who have it all figured out, because nobody would ever be on this show.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be on this show. Like, I'm not doing this podcast because I have it figured out. I'm doing this podcast because I'm figuring it out.
Yes.
And I really, truly, 100% believe that is the reason why, like, for me, I think. And it's so funny, I kind of like coined this term, like digital missionary. Like I really, really, really see that as the call for me, because even on social media, there's been this kind of picture of this is what your life is supposed to look like, and so many people compare and they look, and it's like, man, if they could only see,
you did it again,
everything, the process behind it.
Digital missionary.
Yeah, it kind of came like it. Yeah, that was.
You did it again.
Yeah, like, that was kind of like crazy.
You're talking, and I'm like, where in the world? I've never heard of that before. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I'm trying to, because I have this this kind of mind that just tries to put things together and understand. So I'm thinking digital missionary. A missionary does this. Digital means this, and like that whole idea is awesome. Hold on to that. I love that digital missionary. I love just like that creative engineer stuff or something you said earlier. Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. Thank you. Again, I get it from you. So it's like I'll take it. I do. But like even going like back to stuff about social media, is like there is this picture put out of what the perfect life should look like. And it's so funny, and I didn't think about this before, but like there's this like Christian like group, music group. They're called Riders, and they have this one song. It's called Priorities, and like the song there's this line where it says like I don't want to live like a movie no more. I'm not the main star. I'm not the reason. And social media really like makes you feel like it's this thing of like, this is like, welcome to my life. Like, this is my life. And I'm like, if only we could see more. And my heart is that hopefully this is what like I can do, is like show that, okay, like this isn't welcome to Justin's world. This is like welcome to the story that God is producing, and I just so happen to be a part of it.
Wow.
And like, welcome to the amazing things about that. Welcome to the honestly kind of sucky things about it as well.
Right.
Like, and it's like, yeah. And so my prayer is just like, even on here, like with the camera going out, I'll be, and I'm sure you knew that you could tell that I was freaking out a little bit.
Of course you were.
That I was, and I was just like, God, like, are you serious? Like, what's going on?
Let me go get some potato chips.
Right, and then she went downstairs to go eat, and I'm sitting here like, oh my goodness, like what's going on? Stressing out. But it's like, oh my goodness, it's all part of the journey, and it's like there's so much stress just taken off because now we can find the joy in it. And we can like live in the joy of that, not the joy of making it all about us.
That's right.
But living in the joy and the tension of like, okay, God, like you're taking me on this journey. Like you want me, you do want me,
right.
and you've chosen me. So like we can't become so prideful in it, but we do need to be joyful in knowing that God has chosen us.
Yeah, that's
He
true.
has.
There's a
He's
joy
chosen
in that.
us.
And you know what I thought about? I hope is the camera still going right now?
I hope so.
I hope
it's
so
fine.
too. Yeah. Okay.
And we can just just keep going. I'm afraid it is. Just keep going.
Rough draft. So the first time we did this was a rough draft.
Right.
Okay. So this time, hey, there's some things that we're talking about now that we
didn't talk about.
I think there's a level of transparency even now.
And this one that we didn't have before.
we didn't have. And you know what? That whole thing that I said last time about being stuck in the perfection bubble.
Yeah.
Like, so many things are not birthed because we get stuck in this perfection bubble and we never release anything, or we never want anybody to see our, imperfections.
Right,
but we are perfectly imperfect.
That's so good.
And so, I mean,
that's so good.
People need that.
Yes.
The people that you're reaching, they're going to need that, And I know you were bummed out about it. And I'm sitting here like, let them be okay, God. It's okay. We're okay. It's gonna be just fine.
Good.
So
it's
just the object lesson. This is what it's about.
This is what it's about. And I just really appreciate you so much because you have really garnered and really built that. But I know that it didn't happen for you overnight. And so one more thought, and then I'm gonna ask you a question, and that'll actually close us out.
Okay.
But just kind of just seeing the journey that God has taken me on, like the goal of my heart for this podcast is, and you kind of touched on it earlier, when you were talking about me feeling like I had to do it how everybody else does it.
Yeah.
And that was such a huge thing with comparison. And now I can like proudly say that I'm in a place where it's like I think I finally found my lane of how God uses me and how He moves through me, and it's different, and I've accepted that it's different, and so now I can fully walk in it. Is it perfect? No, but this podcast, and I remember I told you about it before, but this podcast is like my war on perfectionism. Like I'm so over the cookie cutter.
Yes.
Perfectly made, like because none of it is perfect. None of it is perfect. Nothing is perfect. And so if we can just embrace that, understand that, control what we can control.
Right.
I'm not saying we don't like apply ourselves and become better versions of ourselves, but what I am saying is that we can control what we can control and leave the rest up to God. And it will always work itself out. Oh, yeah. And I see that in you now. I know it wasn't always there. So like being like at the place you are now, and like even like talking to the viewers and people who are listening, like how did you kind of grow and mature to get to that place, even to the point of leaving your job and all that in between?
Oh yeah. Well, man, it was a journey. You know my history. You know that it has not always been easy for me.
Right.
Had a very dysfunctional upbringing and had to fight through some things, through some the spirit of rejection and depression and all of that. And God just showed Himself to be strong and mighty through all of that. And, I'm a great proponent for deliverance and believe that God is a deliverer. And I've seen Him do that in my life. And so one thing that I've always said is, the worst thing the enemy could have ever done is to let me get free, because once I was free, it's like this whole Harriet Tubman kind of mentality. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get as many people as I can.
That is so good.
especially in the area of women's empowerment. That's what I do. That's who I coach mostly, you know, in that area. And so it's an everyday fight.
Yes.
One thing that keeps me going is that I heard somebody say it one time, and I've never let it go, is that when you do what God has told you to do, down to the every detail that he has given you, and you follow that, you have a 100% success rate. And so the success is not dependent upon how many people watch me, how many people, because you know I'm out there on social media as well, how many people listen to me, how many people come in my broadcast. The real victory is in that I did what God told me to do. And so every day I got to keep that at the forefront of my mind. Have I done today what God told me to do? And it's a decision every day. I don't care how old we are. I don't care how long we've been in ministry. I would venture to say that for everybody, it's a daily decision to be who it is that God has called you to be. It's not that the enemy doesn't come knocking on my door, you know, with some of the old things that I used to deal with. But the difference is that I don't answer. I don't open it, right? I see him, but I don't let him in.
I love that.
And we have that ability to guard our space and our place, be obedient to God, do what he has told us to do, and leave everything else up to him. He does the heavy lifting in our lives.
That's so good. Hey guys, Justin here. Again, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Rough Draft. I'm so excited to see where this show goes, and I'm so excited that you're joining me on the journey. Follow us on Instagram at Rough Draft Podcast to keep up with all of our podcast news and updates, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.